We're joined from Cairo by Dr. Muhammad Osman, International Relations Specialist, and from Ramallah by Mrs. Tamara Haddad, writer and political researcher. Welcome to Qnews. I will start with you, Dr. Osman. Now, Envoy Steve Witkoff said that the phased negotiations approach has failed. Why has the U.S. now started seeking a comprehensive deal to end the war and bring all the detainees? And how might this impact future negotiations?
Thank you for having me, Hannah.
It was a pleasure.
It seems that once again, we have fallen victim to U.S.-Israeli ploys, to rather evil tricks that are staged by both sides. The two countries have, in a rather impeccable manner, created a facade of a serious negotiating process for the past few weeks and months. And it seems that now the end game is actually the fulfillment of all of Israel's war aims, whether by a deal or by a raw military force, it seems. And now the Israeli and American media are attempting once more to give us the illusion that there is a disagreement between Israel and the United States. However, if you pay a very small amount of attention to what Witkoff has said after visiting Gaza, it's very self-explanatory and revealing. Witkoff denied that there is a famine, even though he went and spent 5 hours on the ground witnessing all of the carnage and the starvation that is consuming Gaza. Yet this did not make him change his mind about his assessment of the humanitarian situation on the ground. He also said that Hamas will disarm and must disarm, which apparently turned out to be not true. And it seems now that the Israelis are giving Hamas a final ultimatum: either you give in to all of our demands, including disarmament and the unconditional release of the detainees, or Israel will go ahead and occupy the rest of the Gaza Strip and annihilate whatever is left of Gaza and Hamas itself. Now, there is even official talk of annexation of parts of the Gaza Strip as a means of applying pressure on the Palestinians. And it seems that on the ground, the Israelis are actually doing that by depopulating huge swaths of the Gaza Strip. And the Americans reportedly greenlit the idea of annexation. So let's not kid ourselves. These negotiations are not serious. Any talk of a ceasefire or a settlement is basically talk of an unconditional surrender of the Palestinian factions to Israeli demands. All the masks are off right now, Hala. The Americans are playing in plain sight in the sunlight, and we should know with whom we are dealing with, whether the Americans or the Israelis, or unfortunately Hamas, who have proven to be sheerly irresponsible in this regard as well, which I might dwell upon later on.
Yes. Mrs. Haddad, now Witkoff said that Trump now believes in an all-or-nothing approach to Gaza that releases all the detainees and ends the war in one comprehensive deal. Is this a genuine strategic pivot, or just to distance the U.S. from the failure of the phased approach that it previously endorsed?
Greetings to you. Firstly, the U.S.'s approach, in addition to the Israeli interception, is the decisive result that given the ultimatum to Hamas movement as they put it in the corner. Either you accept a comprehensive deal or would choose another choice, which is the continuation of the military operation in the Gaza Strip. The comprehensive deal outlines the release of the hostages, among which is the end of the war, with the conditions of getting Hamas out of the political security and peaceful approach. And I think Hamas is rejecting this matter, following the mechanism the U.S. along with Israel are dealing strategically, which is upon the rejection of Hamas, meaning that the United States would execute its project upon the war beginning at the Gaza Strip under the U.S. mandate. As indicated, Hamas, if they do not accept, would choose the other option, which is the siege, or to siege into the central governance by using the military and humanitarian pressures. This is one side, and on the other side, the military operation will be expanded throughout Gaza upon the return of the full occupation to the enclave. An international community should be informed to be internationalized as it is part and parcel of the U.S. sovereignty under the governing and administration of the United States. An idea related to Witkoff's visit as an economic person believes as the U.S. administration as Trump's that the Gaza Strip should be transformed to the Middle East Riviera. Therefore, the rejection of U.S. proposal exploited by U.S. and Israel to have a recreational deal and the occupation of the Gaza. This wouldn't be achieved unless the depopulation of Gaza through the mechanism of the humanitarian humanitarian aid administration. Even Witkoff visited the two posts of humanitarian aid in order to improve the images of U.S. and Israel. And Witkoff, before the media personnel, pointed out that there is no starvation, so the mechanism of starvation have succeeded, but to indicate that the American Gaza or the GHF is backed by U.S. solely managed to distribute the humanitarian aid as the other dimension is in a strategic, so Gaza will be internationalized, backed by U.S. through the comprehensive strategy of the U.S., or rather Israel, administered by U.S., as it is a message to Hamas, either accepted or rejected, so the other options will be in place upon the failure of the comprehensive settlement. So the upcoming options will be the more harsh against the Palestinian people until the surrender or dismantling Hamas in order to be out of Gaza. So for the Palestinians,
yes. I get your point so far, and we are going to still continue our discussions. We have a lot of questions for you, but I will go now to Dr. Osman. Now, reportedly, Dr. Osman, Netanyahu and Witkoff have agreed that there is a need to shift from a framework for the release of some of the detainees to a framework for the release of all of them, the disarmament of Hamas and the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. Why now? And what message does this send about Israel's priorities?
It says that it revealed actually or exposed that the Americans are adopting the absolutist aims of the Israelis, basically the maximalist aims of the complete elimination of Hamas from the Gaza Strip and all forms of Palestinian resistance, as well the complete demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, putting the Gaza Strip under some sort of American tutelage or administration of some sort, not even a genuine Palestinian one like the Palestinian Authority, like the Arab states and Egypt and Europe and the rest of the world basically is pushing for. But no, they are not even leaning towards that. They are pushing for something that is completely different, that will further jeopardize any chances of Palestinian statehood in the future, as remote as those chances are, as you very well know, Hannah. So it seems that right now the Americans are trying to create a pretext for Israel to continue the war of annihilation against the people of Palestine in Gaza. It seems that they have decided that enough negotiations, that we are going nowhere with Hamas, and that only Hamas understands force. That's the message they are getting, and therefore they will not settle even for any temporary deals that we were all against. We were all for a comprehensive deal for a settlement in Gaza, but definitely not a comprehensive deal for a settlement that will entail the elimination of any Palestinian ruling structure inside Gaza, and even pave the way for the forced displacement and the ethnic cleansing of the people of Gaza, one way or the other. These matters are all interconnected, and they intersect in a way that we cannot pry them off one another or attempt to analyze them separately, as you very well know, Hannah.
Yes. Mrs. Haddad, now Hamas has denied any readiness to give up its weapons. How does this reflect internal resistance dynamics and the movement's negotiation position?
Firstly, Hamas movement, the more they rejected, the more Israel exploited. In the contrary, Israel is in favor of the mechanism of rejection by Hamas. It's a reflection to the Palestinian causes by choosing the other choice. Either there are connections between Trump and Israel to execute Plan B, meaning following the failure of the comprehensive deal will be planned or executed, but the mechanism of the failure of the comprehensive deal will be moving to the Plan B, indicates the reality of the siege and a gradual attrition of Hamas, and targeting the central governorates and using the military pressure, along with the humanitarian pressures. Specifically in that area, the Palestinians will be moved to the southern area, and then Hamas will be designated in the central government for those who are staying to be named as Hamas cadres, and then will be assassinated, and then they minimize the population through choosing the Palestinian either to stay or the first displacement. So Hamas, upon the nature of negotiations, aren't not clear. Netanyahu stalling the same as Hamas, or to fill the gaps for the purpose of maintaining its governance and presence in the Gaza Strip. Hamas indicated the reality of rejection of disarmament as it is very much related to the negotiation chips, or to be moved into political party as rejected by Israel and USA. Hamas moves now at this moment do not have the luxury of options, any state of luxury, as it is in a very tight position, and even if accept or rejected the comprehensive deal. Hamas has also one point, is the buying times and a waiting for the international pressure, a change of power balancing and calculus within the Israel, along with the problems facing Netanyahu and Bin Gvir. Hamas thinks that this is a bit and bargain, but I think it is a mal-calculated bargain. And that there are two parties prolonging the war in Gaza Strip. Hamas, from one hand, to maintain its presence in the government, and from the other hand, Netanyahu might stay in the mid of 2020 in the government. Both sides do not wish to halt the military operation in the Kiev, as they are intercepted with 2 points, which are the presence and whoever wishes to remain to maintain the war in Gaza Strip, they would have no hope for the people in Gaza, and its reflection on the ultimate victims, women and children, and the continuation of humanitarian aid and its impact on the nature of nutrition and health. The prolonging the war, though it inflicted the tension in the region as a whole.
Dr. Osman, now Hamas responded clearly to Witkoff's claims no disarmament before a Palestinian state is established with Jerusalem as its capital. How does this affect the viability of U.S.-Israeli plans now?
Hamas, unfortunately, has went to bed with the devil, basically, in the past. They have negotiated with the Americans separately and directly, sidelining the Arab mediators several times, and they trusted that the Americans might actually treat them as partners or peers inside the Gaza Strip, as outlandishly naive and stupid. That was, and excuse my selection of words. And unfortunately, now they come to pay the price. They are being asked, or not asked, they are given ultimatums.
Ordered.
To disarm. And they refuse. And by refusing, they play right into the hands of the Israelis and the Americans. The Americans and the Israelis know very well that Hamas will not agree to a disarmament, and this will be a pretext for further escalation, unfortunately, which will entail the destruction of whatever is left of the Gaza Strip, unfortunately, to make it completely uninhabitable. And I do agree with Mrs. Haddad from Ramallah in what she said, that she knows that both Netanyahu and Hamas have a vested interest in prolonging this war, because the end of this war might spell the end of both Netanyahu's government and Netanyahu as a political leader and a prominent politician in Israel, and Hamas as a movement that has basically dragged the Gaza Strip into the abyss and into a war of annihilation against the far superior opponent, Israel, which is one of the most violent states on earth, a state that does not think twice about administering brutal force to a civilian population who is mostly unarmed, and to use the weapons such as mass killings and starvations and displacement as a means to destroy the livelihoods of Palestinians in an effort to basically liquidate the Palestinian cause. So this is what Hamas has brought to the Palestinians, unfortunately. This is Hamas's historical contribution to the Palestinian cause. It pains me, Hala, to say these words, but they are very long due. And I think we have held our tongues for far long enough, but now it's time to speak very plainly about the results of this miscalculated adventure that has led to the complete annihilation of the Palestinians in Gaza. And of course, this is not to exonerate Israel. Israel is the criminal actor behind all of this. Israel propped up Hamas in Gaza in order to and deepen divisions within Palestine. It is within the vested interest to have the Palestinian National Front perpetually divided. And this is what Netanyahu has admittedly done before this war. And he paid the price because he would basically trusted that Hamas would not do this to him, but they eventually did on the 7th of October. So unfortunately, the only victim here are the Palestinian people.
Civilians, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Mrs. Haddad, now Netanyahu reportedly prefers a temporary ceasefire for political reasons, while the U.S. now wants a comprehensive deal that permanently ends the war. Witkoff said that the U.S. is working with Israel on that. So do you expect Israel to accept a deal that ends the war permanently?
Truly. Netanyahu is very much concerned of a partial deal, as any cessation of the war comprehensively on Gaza without achieving any absolute victory will achieve for him personally at least great popular voices would lead him to be in power or any future elections, either early elections or in the half of 2026. As today's polls within Israel indicated that Netanyahu's popularity, or such a poll shows that Netanyahu did not deliver what he should do regarding the war on Gaza that reached 23%. In return, the public opinion and stance of the Israeli army had reached 77%. Netanyahu, up till now, the polls aren't acceptable for Netanyahu. So he wants to get any political or personal gains to keep him in the power, meaning to release the hostages without any indications of the Israeli withdrawal or the cessation of military operation. So it's very much a concern to release the hostages and then would complete the military operation in order to achieve the strategic, the enclave by the intersecting the strip and another way to accept the American dedication, meaning the intersection of 70% of Gaza under the protection of isolated area that should be protected under the Israeli sovereignty. Through the whole sector will be reoccupied upon Ben Gvir's and Symmetri's vision. But I think what is left as 20% will be staggered by the people as they are living in cattle, and that would lead to the idea of Netanyahu is the forced displacement. U.S. is very much concerned of the comprehensive deal in order to end the page of the conflict in Gaza, to be free with the other issues in Ukraine and other areas in the world. But America is very much concerned to end the tension, to think strategically to deal with the sector. After the mission had became very clear to keep Gaza under UN committee presided by the U.S. as it is a part and parcel of the U.S. states. And then, if there is an approval of the mechanism of the partial deal, Netanyahu sees it is very much important, specifically, and the beginning of the upcoming months, and they will to have the Knesset holidays. So he prefers this part in order for Symmetric and Ben Gvir to withdraw during such a holiday. The mechanism of releasing the hostages within partial agreement through which he thinks but he might gain any popular votes. But I think in the idea of comprehensive deals, both sides, Hamas would accept the release of hostages provided to keep it in power or in presence. But Netanyahu accepts the release of the hostages but rejected that this matter would have implications on his personal presence. So the idea of achieving the absolute victory in order to have some sort of a breakthrough regarding the popular seats and to distance himself from any trials to come.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. Osman, with the shifting positions of the U.S. and Israel, the multiple failed negotiation rounds and the humanitarian situation reaching a breaking point, how do you envision an end to this devastating war?
Unfortunately, I think that the vision, the end I envision is rather sad and tragic. I hope it's never realized. I think that the Israelis will move to a wider operation, and even wider operation inside the Gaza Strip. They might even attempt to, quote unquote, free the detainees through military force. Some of them might even die. The Americans have hinted that this is an available option, and they will work on moving the entirety of the population of the Gaza Strip into, or at least as many as they can, into southern Gaza, to this so-called new humanitarian city in Rafah, which is basically a concentration camp, as I have mentioned before on your respectable screen. And whoever will be left in central Gaza will be placed under a siege and an embargo until they move to the south. And the end game will be attempting to deport as many of those Palestinians to third countries through what they call voluntary departure or voluntary migration, which is basically a masked version or operation of outright ethnic cleansing and forced displacement. This will be the Israeli playbook in the next few weeks or even month. I think they will try to go for what they perceive as a total military victory that will ensure or secure the structure of whatever is left of Hamas's capabilities, and at least reducing the territory of the Gaza Strip, taking away lands, even annexing lands, parts of the Gaza Strip, northern Gaza, and the buffer zone. I think this is very plausible. I think this very well might happen if the Americans actually gave it a green light, as the Israeli media has reported. So unfortunately, I foresee a very grim future, a very grim scenario ahead. I hope I'm wrong. I hope cooler, more moral heads prevail. I hope something changes on the ground that will derail us from this course of action. But unfortunately, as things stand, all the variables point to the fact that we are facing a very, very bad scenario ahead.
But let's hope for the best. And I'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Muhammad Osman, International Relations Specialist, and also Mrs. Tamara Haddad, writer and political researcher. Thank you so much for your valuable insights.